Wait for it. Wait for it. Yes. More socially undistant Stasic racing in my backyard. Hashtag ride sooner. That's the cool thing about Stasics. You can turn your yard into a racetrack. But even better news is we don't only have to use yards for racetracks now, because there are small signs that racing is back, including a race of sorts that took place just last night in an undisclosed location. And it kind of felt like backyard moto in a way, but it was clearly at a real motocross track, and it was called Moto Fite Klub. We'll cover that and also the upcoming, hey, Stasics climbed this hill? No wonder all my mulch back here is getting destroyed. And by the way, this is a playground that was built behind my house, so I essentially got a free playground without having to pay for it, because that's how I roll. Yeah, Moto Fite Klub took place yesterday, and there'll be more racing this weekend. Grand National Cross Country Series coming back May 16th and 17th in Georgia, so that's the first points-paying championship sanction type event since this whole lockdown. So big steps being taken. First, I'll review Moto Fite Klub in this edition of the Weege Show. Yeah, race tech, why not? Hook those guys up. Gold valves, you're gonna need it, because racing's back. So Moto Fite Klub, you may or may not have watched. It's a totally different type of race. It was pay-per-view only, and I don't know how many people sprung for it. I don't know what you were supposed to expect. I didn't know what I expected, but as a journalist, I had to watch it, and I'm glad I did. It turned out awesome, because even the bad stuff was good. It was almost perfectly good and perfectly bad. Rob Bitus, a longtime voice. If you go to the Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Championship races, he's one of the main announcers here in the tower. He whooped this together with his buddies like Ryan Villapoto, Jeff Stanton, Damon Bradshaw. Then they got Travis Pastrana on board, Mike Alessi on board, Jake Weimer, Ivan Tedesco, who was sick, unfortunately, and could not race. Brock Glover, 59 years old, he rode, still goes really fast, still does all the jumps. It was a passion project for these guys. And what I thought was really cool about it, although you could see that they were practically making up rules as they went, although the television production values were certainly not what a normal $19.99 pay-per-view event, which would probably originate from, say, the MGM Grand, and it's a huge boxing match with millions of dollars on the line. No, the production values were not at that level. But look, what production? We haven't had any production of anything in 2 months. Just the fact that they did this, I thought was amazing. And the fact that it had that raw element to it, I think added character. You really felt like this was directly from the minds of those riders, legendary riders from the past, who know a thing or two about racing, literally spilling every idea they had right onto the track. The track design, they said, was kind of based on, you know, them walking it and saying, hey, let's build up this inside, let's build up this outside so we can have passing. They did a head-to-head bracket challenge where the races were really short so they could all haul the mail but not have to worry about not being in shape. The track was not too easy, but not ridiculously challenging, and no one got hurt, besides Tedesco, who got sick, but that has nothing to do with the track. So it kind of worked. And yes, under normal circumstances, if you paid $19.99 and there was a race where almost every battle came down to the last turn, and the camera in the last turn didn't work half the time, this is really what happened, you'd be super upset normally, but these are not normal times. Two huge takeaways from Moto Fite Klub. A, man, is it nice to just have some racing at all. And B, how cool are the legends of this sport? Now, when you follow this racing thing for a long time, it becomes very easy to get jaded. You know, the riders should do this, or the team should do that, or I wish the sport was bigger, or these people should be paid more, or can't we fix this, or can't we make that better? It's really easy to pick nits in this sport. There's a lot of injuries. It's not the most popular sport in the world, which means the riders are not the most well-paid athletes in the world, considering those injuries and the risks they take and how hard they work. Very easy to complain about those things. But then when you start to lose racing and then you see it come back, you realize, yeah, but it's still cool. But more importantly, is it not awesome to see, for as jaded as we are, that a whole bunch of guys that are retired still love this thing so much that they're willing to drive across the country to make no money, to take a huge risk, to put on an event that may not have been able to happen, and do it really just for charity and for love? The sport can't be all that bad if all these guys who have been through all the highs and all the lows still love it that much, because there was not a dime made for profit for any of these guys. They were trying to A, cover expenses, and B, anything beyond that, they were donating to charity. The event took place in an undisclosed location, but it was on the East Coast. So most of these guys drove cross country to get there. I think that speaks volumes. They did it because they wanted to do it. And boy, could you tell that those boys were having a grand old time. And the way the track and the format worked out, almost every race was a great battle. I mean, to see Travis Pastrana, this really happened. He took Brock Glover's old Yamaha YZ490, and Glover rode Pastrana's more modern 2013 framed old two-stroke 500cc engined machine, and they battled, and then Pastrana even did a backflip on the YZ490, and it was close. They kind of, I think, kept it close. Ryan Sipes had a two-stroke. It sounded awesome. He was ripping on that. Stanton picked the 250 two-stroke. Maybe he would have been faster on a 450, but two strokes are cool, so Stanton did that, even if it meant he wasn't going to win. The spirit that all these guys had of, we're going to try hard to win, we're going to push it, we're going to go fast on the track, but ultimately we're just doing this for fun, and whoever ends up wearing the championship belt, no one's going to be offended. That was awesome. Mike Alessi did win, and it's probably not lost on anyone that it looked like Alessi was taking it more seriously. And let's be honest, if you're going to have a sprint race, 1 or 2 lap format, the all-time hole shot king, he's going to be hard to beat. Oh, and Kevin Windham. I know Pastrana brings the action anywhere he goes, but I think Windham was the most entertaining guy in this thing. The riding style was great. The whips were unbelievable. He rode practice in street clothes like jeans and knee cups over the jeans. He raced his first couple of races wearing a flannel, and he had a photo finish, he versus Sipes. Gosh, this stuff was fun. Who cares if they didn't always have the camera in the last corner? It was just fun, man. Sport's cool. It can't be all that bad if all these guys have are great memories and they want to make more of them. So I think that's a really good sign. Now, as for GNCC coming back this weekend, that's a little more serious because this is a real, again, sanctioned race. It is for points, and they say the goal is to make it look as much like a legitimate championship level GNCC event as possible. But at the same time, they have to do it through social distancing guidelines that they have developed themselves, because obviously the light switch of getting racing going was not going to take place automatically. No longer could these racing organizations afford to wait. They had to make it happen. So a safe to race task force has been put together. They spent about 5 weeks putting together what they call a toolkit on all the different ways that COVID-19 could be transferred at a race and how to stop that from happening. They put that toolkit together. They've gone to local county commissioners and mayors and governors and all that stuff. These guys are loud. And they were able to convince at least this county in Washington, Georgia, to let them come race. It's the same place they had a GNCC the last time they raced, which was 8 weeks ago. Anyway, they convinced, I wish these guys would be quieter. Anyway, they convinced the county that they're gonna not just hold a race because they want to, but they're gonna hold a race because they believe they can do it safely. If you go to gnccracing.com, they just released today on Wednesday morning the actual specific guidelines that they're handing out to riders and their families who are probably gonna come, call them spectators if you want, on all the different steps they're gonna ask you to take to remain socially distant while racing. Now, you may or may not be interested in going to this GNCC. You may or may not be interested in off-road racing at all. But there's a bigger point here. This is a ramp up. Last weekend, they held a ride day at High Point Raceway under the guise of, hey, there's grass growing on the track. Wouldn't it be cool to rip up the grass at High Point? That was what it looked like. But the real reason was to put some of these social distancing guidelines in place and see how it would work in a ride day. Now we're gonna do a championship points paying race, see how that would work under social distancing guidelines. It's the ramp up. This is the door being creaked back open for all other different type of racing. And what's interesting is the Safe to Race task force that made this toolkit that will allow GNCC to happen this weekend. It wasn't just the GNCC people, which is, by the way, a sister company to Racer X. They work next door to us in West Virginia. Also, Dave Prater from Feld, who runs Supercross, he's been in these meetings. Everyone's trying to take every lesson they can from each other. Hey, we were thinking about this. What about this? Well, we noticed this. How about this? Different tracks, different racing types, all trying to work together because they all have one common goal right now, and that's to go racing. The Moto Fite Klub boys beat everyone to the punch. They raced in an undisclosed location. It was really raw. It was get in and get out. We did have Davey Coombs and Andrew Fredrickson there shoot pictures, hang out. They were tested for their temperature going in and out of the event. They had to stay away from each other, but there was a huge risk. But look, if that event got canceled at the last second, oh well, it was a risk those guys were willing to take. This was not a championship points paying event. to get Supercross back, to get GNCC back, to get Lucas Oil Pro Motocross back, to get big amateur races like Loretta Lynn's back. You've got to know that it's going to happen, and you got to know that it's going to happen right. So those are the steps that are being put in place right now, and they're going to put it to the test at the GNCC in Georgia this weekend. That should be very, very interesting, and if it works, a really good sign of life for the sport. Unless you don't think racing should come back, and if you already have an opinion on social distancing, racing, the economy, health, economics, all that, you can watch my previous video that I posted on Monday talking about rants about COVID-19 on YouTube. I had my own rant about rants. But right now we get to focus on what we usually focus on here, and that's racing of some sort. It's kind of already back, and it's about to be much more back soon. I mean, the kids in the backyard in a Stasic, that's cool, but we want the real thing. And I think we're very, very close to getting it.